We're in Kent, and we're going to interview for the Spartan Up podcast Mimi Anderson, who is one of the UK's best female ultra runners. Let's go see if she's in. She'll be getting ready actually for one of the biggest runs that she's ever done. I'm going to take my shoes off. Let's see if she's in. Hi, Mimi.
Hi.
Spartan Up.
Nice to see you. Hi. You might need to help me a little bit here. I've been struggling trying to fit this into my pack.
And how far are you going to be running?
Oh, 1,500 miles, but you know, you're still going to need a hairdryer, aren't you?
All right, we're going. We're live.
We are live. So Spartan Up the podcast, Sefra here, and Joe. We got Colonel Nye and Johnny Wait.
All tucked here in the barn in Pittsfield, Vermont.
Absolutely. And so today we are going back overseas with our dear friend Del, who is interviewing Mimi Anderson, who even since the podcast was filmed, just finished the Freedom Trail, which is about, 1,500 miles across South Africa. She's an incredible distance runner. And
but that wasn't
what?
the big deal.
What was the big deal?
She did it carrying a hairdryer.
Oh, hairdryer is really important. But it reminds me of a story. Joe, didn't you run from New York City back to Vermont one time?
I did, but that's not the Freedom Trail. That's only 300 miles. That's not.
It's the free trail.
Miles.
He was too cheap to pay for a cab.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. It was an expensive cab.
Yeah, sure is.
So yeah, this is going to be amazing, and Del's doing a great job for us over there, finding some incredible people.
Absolutely.
Del's awesome,
Del is
right?
awesome.
I mean, she's a crazy endurance athlete anyway. Yeah. She's a doctor. She's superhuman.
You know who else is awesome?
Who?
Marion.
We forgot about Marion, the person
Marion
behind the camera. Marion is our camera person we picked for today. She's absolutely awesome. So when you watch these podcasts, just know that there are tons of hardworking people behind the scenes that are getting all this done. Lights, cameras, and their name.
And they all look like Marion.
They all look like Marion. That's right.
Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about that when we talk about endurance events. What Marion calls an endurance event is when Joe calls and says, "I have an idea."
That's right.
That's always an endurance
a
event.
Serious endurance event.
But let's go over the ocean and see this endurance event.
Let's go see Del and Mimi.
We finally managed to catch up with probably the UK's grittiest, most motivated woman. We are here. We've managed to chase her down, and nobody manages to stop this woman. This is Mimi Anderson. Thank you for spending some time with us.
It's my pleasure. I love the introduction. That's great.
Bit of an accolade. But you are actually one of the UK's best female ultra runners, if not the best.
Well, I don't think I'm sort of the best, but I'm good at what I do. So the distances that I cover. So yeah, I specialise in over 100 miles rather than under 100 miles. Yeah.
And what got you started in running these kind of distances?
Well, first of all, I started running because I wanted thinner legs, which sounds really daft now, but I never liked the shape of my legs, so that was the first thing. And then when a friend of mine actually suggested doing the Marathon des Sables, which was my first ultra.
So you cut your teeth on the Marathon des Sables?
Yeah, so I went from half marathons all the way up to that. But I just, I had that moment in my heart, when somebody suggests something and I thought, well, why can't I do that? It was so out of the ordinary. As a mother with 3 children, and then somebody was suggesting going and doing this extraordinary sort of adventure, and I was just so excited. So I couldn't think why.
You'd only ever really run half marathons before? So
yeah, that was my furthest, and that killed me.
And how old were you when you really started doing these distances, can I ask?
I was 36 when I started running, so I was 2001 was my first ultra, so 38?
And since then you've done some of the biggest, longest, most difficult distances that most men wouldn't achieve. Can you tell us? Yes. You did the Badwater. You did the double Badwater.
Well, I did Badwater in 2005, the race, and I was absolutely thrilled to finish. And then I decided to go back in 2011, where I did the double crossing because there's always a record to be broken somewhere. And so I did the race, climbed up Mount Whitney, which is 14,500 feet. And then came all the way back down, and I took 21 hours off the previous female record. And I believe I've got the 3rd fastest time for the double crossing.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I had to get my crew to keep on checking that they were actually right. But no, it's fantastic. Yeah, I'm
That's
really pleased.
incredible. And you've done the Comrade, the 6633, which is the
In the
Arctic
Arctic, yeah.
Ultra, which is considered to be probably the coldest, most difficult.
Yes, because
marathon.
it's so far. There's another one in the Yukon, but the 6633 is 500 miles further north, and it actually goes across the Arctic Circle and finishes on the Arctic Ocean. I mean, how fantastic, you know.
What made you want to do that?
Well, it was another, I'd never done a cold. And I just signed up for it. I saw it on the internet. It was organised by a friend of mine, and I saw it, and I didn't tell my husband or anything. I just signed up for it. I had no idea how I was going to get the money, or how I was going to afford all the kit, or what I was going to do for training. Absolutely no idea at all. I just signed up for it, and then I told my husband.
And how did you train for that, living here in sort of sunny Kent? How did you train for that kind of environment?
Tyre dragging. I literally was out in the forest with this big tyre around me, and I would drag a tyre around the forest for hours and hours on end. And, you know, sometimes I'd do 4 or 5 hours, come back home, have something to eat, and then go back out again and do another couple of hours. It was quite tedious, but it made my legs very strong and simulated sort of the pulling of the sledge. So.
And would you consider that the toughest race you've done, or what would you consider the hardest?
It's always a difficult one, because they're all... I think the hardest one, in a way, was the Marathon des Sables. It's not a particularly hard race, depending on whether you're going to race it or to sort of do it. But for me, it was the hardest. I'd never done a race like that. I trained really hard for it. But I was actually very ill during the race. I picked up a bug and wasn't able to keep anything down. So it was either coming out one end or the other. And ended up having an IV drip. I think it was the end of day 3, and so of course the next day we had to get up and go and do the long day, which was 50 miles.
And it just didn't stop you though. In spite of all of that, you just kept going.
I did. I mean, I did have a moment sort of on the long day coming up to the checkpoint. The agreement was that we would always sort of rest, have something to eat, and then continue through the night. And I was everything was coming up, and I had a very feel sorry for my moment. And I remember us crying, and I was behind the other two, and I was just trying so hard just to keep up with them. And then one of my teammates literally came up in front of me, and she checked that I was all right. And then she just said, Mimi, do you know, just think of all those people at home who think you're going to fail. And just walked off, and that was it.
Think of the other people who think you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And is that what kept you going?
Oh, yeah. I just thought, I can't go home and say I haven't got this medal. And so I finished. Absolutely. And those little words have actually stayed with me ever since, every time. Because lots of people did think I was going to fail that. You know, there's this blonde going out, and, you know, I like my hairdryer and my makeup, and yeah, I did like high shoes. I can't wear them now, but, you know, all of that. And sitting, you know, I'm going to be camping in a desert and carrying all my food. You know, Mimi just won't cope with that. Forget it. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
I proved
Fist
them
in your
wrong.
face. Let's
Absolutely.
Take that.
So, yeah. But those little words, it's amazing how that just made the difference.
Because I have to admit, I've done an ultra where I crashed and burnt just 6 miles short of a finish line on a similar distance.
That's hard.
And it hurt me so hard mentally for quite a long time to get back into racing, confidence-wise. Have you ever failed? Have you ever not succeeded at a race?
Oh, yeah. No, a few. I think for me the worst one really was when I was trying to do the double Spartathlon. I'd done Spartathlon, which is a race from Greece, Athens in Greece, all the way to Sparta.
Yeah, the original.
Yeah, absolutely. It is.
How far is that one?
It's 153 miles non-stop.
53, and hot environment?
It's hot, and you have a little mountain at 100 miles that you have to go up and over. And there are cut-offs, so there are about 74 checkpoints, I think, and every checkpoint has its own cut-off, so you're constantly chasing a time. And I'd actually podiumed in 2011, so I knew I was capable of doing it. So this time I thought, right, I'm going to go there, I want to run the race and then turn around and run back again. And my body had other designs and other thoughts. I'm not sure really what went wrong. I think I had a very slight bug or something because I just didn't feel quite normal, which then meant that I wasn't eating properly. I'm very bad at eating anyway, but I was even worse, and my crew were actually getting quite cross with me. And with about 10 kilometres to go the medical crew came over and said, do you want to get into the car? And I thought, why do I want to get into the car? I'm racing. I don't understand why everybody suddenly is asking me all these questions. Am I all right? Well, of course I'm all right, you see. And I carried on going. Well, I then had turned into this rag doll. My back had literally collapsed. It wasn't sore. Nothing was sore. But I was arched backwards. And so my back
even realise that you were unwell at that point?
No, I was slurring my words. I'd been slurring my words from about 120 miles. I sound as if I'd been drinking. And so, of course, everybody was worried about me. And I fought and fought and fought to get to that finish line. I wasn't going to get into a car. The medical guy had to come with me in the end. And literally, he was holding me upwards. And I had 6K to go. And I had to pull out. It's the hardest thing, and even now it makes me cry. Actually, it's awful. But
Still a tough one.
and I was taken to the finish line in a medical car, to the medical tent. And when I actually got back to the hotel, I lying down on the bed, and I turned around to my crew and I said, "Right, we're coming back next year, or in 2015, and we'll do it again. And this time we will succeed." But that was hard. Yeah,
going to give it another shot.
I am.
I love
Absolutely.
that. Still not going to quit. I love it. So what did you learn from that? What was the biggest lesson there?
I think I learnt that I was more... I mean, I know I'm a pretty determined character. I am more determined than I thought I was, because the willpower that I used, considering how ill I was, just to try and get to that finish line was immense. Also, I think I set myself too many goals on that particular race. I went out wanting to podium again and do the double. Didn't really work, so I perhaps was going out too fast and trying too hard and chasing the ladies in front, so I was getting slower and slower and slower. So I think next time I go out with one goal, and that goal is to try and be the first female to do the double, not to podium and then do the double. So that was a big learning curve.
Another record. Still aiming for records.
Well, I quite like them. I'm not going out to collect them. I'm not that sort of person. I love the challenge of not necessarily racing in a race. That terrifies me sometimes, because people expect me to do well. Well, I'm 52 now, and I'm racing against women who are in their late 20s or early 30s, and they are fantastic, way faster than me.
But you still hold 3 Guinness World Records for distance running, don't you?
Well, I hold 2 of them. One of them has actually been taken away from me by another runner, which is fantastic, because that's what records are there for.
You're off to South Africa?
I am. I'm going to be running 1,500 miles, or 2,350 kilometres, along the Freedom Trail in South Africa. So it starts in Pietermaritzburg and literally goes cross-country all the way to Paarl, just outside Cape Town. And I'll be doing it with another girl from South Africa called Samantha Gash. So
amazing.
2 barking mad women, but quite fun.
Fantastic.
No.
So still not slowing down, still got goals to achieve.
I think it's important. If you don't constantly push your boundaries and try something different, you're never going to know whether you can do something, but you won't grow as a person, I don't think, unless you're always searching for something or trying new things. It doesn't have to be as extreme as mine, but if you're always trying to sort of improve or try things, then I think you grow as a person and become hopefully a better person.
I hope you're not sitting still while you listen. If you are, you better get a burpee break in.
Okay, so you're off to run a phenomenal distance in South Africa. I mean, how are you going to break that up? How long is it going to take?
Well, the plan is that we've had a lot of help from a group of people in South Africa. So we're aiming to run about 50 miles each day. So it'll be anything from about sort of 45 to 50 plus miles each day. The terrain that we're covering is, well, anything from dirt tracks to single track to up and over mountains, river crossings. So it's very diverse, and some sections very technical. So, an 8-kilometre section could take us about 5 hours, because we're also having to navigate. So
you're navigating. Have you got other people out there helping you in the field, or?
We'll have a crew of we've got about 6 people coming out to support us at various times, and so we'll have 1 or 2 vehicles depending on the stage of the race that we're at or the run that we're at. And their job is they'll stay with us for as long as they can, but there are sections where the vehicles won't be able to go at all. So Samantha and I will go on our own with a security guy. You know, Africa is, it's a very remote areas where we're going to be. It is literally in the middle of nowhere, and some of the tracks aren't even marked on the maps.
Yeah. Does it frighten you at all? Because some of those areas of South Africa can be quite dangerous, especially for women.
They can. There are some of the villages, I think, or townships we go through, I think could be quite dangerous, at night more so. But we do have very good security guard. We have a personal protection officer who's going to be with us all the time. So from that, and we have a tracking system as well. So I have a phone with me that if something happens, actually I can just press a red alert and it comes back to the UK. So actually, do you know, I'm feeling as if we've put everything in place to make everybody, and especially Samantha and myself, as the 2 girls, as safe as possible. So, yeah, no, I do feel safe, actually. I've been to South Africa many times. I've never felt unsafe there.
Wonderful.
Actually, so...
And how much water are you planning on carrying? Water? How many calories are you going to have to eat a day?
Oh, a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not very good on calories. Water we will have, depending on whether we're able to see vehicles and things, we'll have camelbacks, and we'll also have water in bottles. You know, I can't stand gels and bars and things, so for me it has to be as natural as possible.
So
and
proper food.
Proper food, you know, even if it's sandwiches or a roll or a cheese or fruit or nuts, something like that. Not easy to get them down me all the time.
How are you training for something like this?
I'm getting quite tired actually now, it has to be said. Roll on taper, long sort of back-to-back training sessions. So I did one 10-day cycle where I ran for 20-odd K every single day. So that gets your legs used to running on tired legs. I then do 2 long back-to-back runs, so they could be anything from sort of 30k up to sort of 50k. And sometimes I'll go and do longer ones. So I did a race in Cyprus, which was 135 miles long, which in fact I think I was the only person to finish, which did make me laugh actually. So, but that for me was good training, and I felt fantastic. So I was quite positive about it and sort of in a zone. So that was, you know, that was very good training for this. So it's just lots of time on my feet.
And anything other than running, do you do any other sports to compensate, or stretching?
No, I do stretch. Yeah, I do stretch, and I try and have sports massages probably once a month. Any more than that gets quite expensive. And I see an osteopath, and I do try, although I'm not very good at this, I do try and do, you know, core exercises and some other sort of types of exercises, but I get very bored. You know, I've tried yoga, doesn't work for me. Some people love it. I get to that bit at the end where, you know, you're supposed to relax and just switch off, and I'm sitting there going, okay, well, I've got to go home now and do this and do that, so I can't do it. So I do try. So no, mostly running and stretching.
So would you say that running is your favourite exercise?
Yes, but I love my bed. I do love my bed. At the end of the day, I just like being horizontal.
That's it.
You know,
sleeping, lying down.
It's just fantastic,
Favourite
isn't it?
exercise.
It's the most wonderful experience. And you're so tired sometimes, you feel as if you're floating on top of the bed, and that's just great. And I'm straight out.
What does the word grit mean to you?
I think never being afraid to try something. When I took up my running, I did it because I wanted to have thin legs. I never dreamt that I would have achieved the things that I have achieved in my life, but I've done that because I've never been frightened to actually give something a go.
And
And
so have you always been this way, even before you started running?
No, I don't think so. I was quite determined at school. I was quite athletic. Well, not athletic. I was quite a determined character at school, but I didn't realise that I was this determined. And I think, you know, lots of people will think, oh no, I can't do that. You know, whereas I will think, well, actually, why can't I do that?
Why do you think that is? What is it about you? Or what is it about your life or character that's made you think differently?
Well, I think having children helps. You know, you have kids. I mean, I was 23 when I had my eldest, and so pretty young. And it's amazing. I think once you've got children, you do become a more focused and a more determined person, and much more independent, I suppose, in a way, because you have to be. And I think I just grew, actually, as a person. I just developed and grew. And my husband was great. I mean, he found it a bit odd, but he has supported me. And that's enabled me to see what I am capable of doing. And, and there have been several times when I think he's thought, she's this time really has lost her marbles. But he's never said anything and has just let me go and do it. And then when I've done it, he's thought, that's my wife. See, that's my wife. She did that.
Excellent.
And he's great. He's lovely. He's lovely.
Your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, but he's enabled me as well, because he's encouraged me to also do the things that I want to do. And I think that's important if you're in a partnership as well, to be able to do that.
Have encouragement and support enables you to achieve. Do you ever have days where you wake up and you just think, I just can't do this today?
Oh, yes. And I'm a great believer you've got to listen to your body, absolutely. And there have been a few times when I've got up in the morning and I think, oh God, I've got to go and do some 10k run today, which I know is not very far, but I've got to do that. So off I go to the forest, take the dogs, or take Morse, and get there, put all my stuff on, start running down the track, and everything. My body is just saying, do you know, Mimi, I'm so not in the mood to do this. So I just stop, turn around and go back to the car. And the dogs look at me and going, excuse me, run? And I'm going, no, not today, we're going home. And I go home because I don't want to do it. And it's great. It's quite liberating, actually.
What about if that feeling comes during a race?
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
No, not in the same way. You know that you're going to have bad patches in a race. Everybody has a bad patch, but you sort of plan for the bad patches as far as you can. So mentally, I always prepare. So I know that if I'm going to have a bad patch, well, what are you going to think about, Mimi? Or what are you going to say to yourself? So I'll tell myself that, you stupid woman, it was your idea in the first place, so pull yourself together and get on with it. Or I'll think about my family. I always have a picture of my family in my head at the finish line. They're very rarely at the finish line, but that to me works really well. And I'm running in towards the finish line, and that's a very strong picture for me. And so all these silly mental pictures and games that I play myself,
lots of visualisation,
and that works really well. So because you know that you'll come out of it.
And in terms of what you've learnt from achieving in these endurance events, how have you put that into your daily life? Has it made any effect?
Yes, it's made me much stronger as a person. I'm feeling silly things like when I first got married, I was your classic sort of stay-at-home wife, and I didn't go off and do girly weekends or do anything like that. And I certainly never travelled on my own. Well, now I don't bat an eyelid about getting on an aeroplane and going off on my own, which I know sounds rather pathetic, but for me, the first time I did it was a very big deal. Terrified me, in fact, more so than the race. I thought, God, I've got to get on an airplane now. I've got to, go to a foreign country. Now, it doesn't worry me, and I feel much more self-assured. I think also having years ago sort of suffered with, or having had anorexia, I was very sort of self-doubting. I didn't have a lot of belief in myself. I didn't have a huge amount of confidence, and I now do have that. I'm much more confident about life as a whole, about how I feel. I'm very proud of what I've achieved, and I hope that's all made me a better person to then hopefully have been a better mother to my kids, which I don't think I would have been to the same extent had I not had the running.
Do you think that anyone can learn sort of confidence from sports achievement and training?
I think so, yes, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be extreme. My daughter went and did her first 5K last year. Now, that was a massive thing for her, a massive achievement. We all went along and supported her, but that made her feel absolutely fantastic, gave her a bit of confidence, and just made her, all the training and everything just made her feel fantastic. So absolutely it can.
So you think this grit is it something people have innately, or is it something that you can learn?
I think it can grow, so you don't necessarily have to have it. I think you have to have the desire to obviously want to try something in the first place. But, you know, it's having that little bit extra to think, well, I can do that. You know, why can't I try that? Or just do that little bit further. It's just always pushing yourself. I think everybody can do that, yes.
So anybody can build immunity to those kind of obstacles in life.
I think so. I think you can overcome a huge amount in your life if you actually just, I think, open yourself up to it. Open yourself up to the possibilities and try.
And who inspires you?
Lots of people. I'm one of these people actually who, I think because when I started running, I didn't know anybody in the running world. You know, I didn't even know that marathons and half marathons existed, let alone the ultra running world. So, you know, of course I love, you know, I'm inspired by all the top runners like Lizzie Hawker and Ellie Greenwood and people like that. You know, they're absolutely amazing. But for me, it's actually the people who really try, and they're doing their first race, and you know, the top runners come in first. These guys are out there for 30 plus hours, and yet they don't ever give up. They come through that finish line and they're on their last legs. They've got blisters, but they have never given up. And those are the people that inspire me, because I just think, you know, it takes much more of determination to do what they're doing.
So there's a common theme that we've heard a couple of times, and I'm sure we'll hear more and more on this because of the great people you've picked. When she talked about that you're never going to grow unless you find your boundaries and push them. Mm-hmm. And it struck me that this is somebody who did that in a big way. She'd run a half marathon and then immediately leaped to the Marathon des Sables, which is across the desert. Yeah,
you know, it's funny, not to take anything away from Mimi, but I was with, 3 days ago, I was with this guy, Nate Carr, Olympic wrestler, and his wife. His wife's never run more than 3 miles. And she said, Joe, I read the book, and I started running, and I did 3 miles, but I'm having a tough time breathing. I said, I'll tell you what I want you to do. She said, what? I said, I want you to run 13 miles 2 days from now. Today I called Nate. What the hell did you have my wife doing? She's running 13 miles today. I said, yeah, once she gets done with 13, 3 is going to be easy.
Yeah,
right?
Sure, exactly.
And so that was, I mean, that's the way I jumped into the endurance stuff. I'm sure that's the way you jumped into the wilderness, certainly the way you jumped into the military.
Well, it's military mindset of training. You know, the more you sweat in training, the less you'll bleed in combat.
Yeah, what was it? Sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say train hard, fight easy, or train easy, fight hard.
Well, they used to say the Spartans, right? All the kings and the leaders back then would say the Spartans must have been part of the 24 words that we have as far as the history of Spartans go. But those damn Spartans are on vacation when they go to battle because of the way they train.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think Mimi obviously takes that approach to life.
Well, yeah, the Marathon des Sables, that's a pretty significant race. And then she runs 100 miles consistently, regularly. I mean, I know a few people like that, not a lot, but that's impressive.
Yeah, that's she's no joke. But you'll go as far as your mind allows you to go, I guess.
Yeah, or she says, listen to your body, right? And then she says, ultimately, when it comes down when she wants to quit, she says, oh, you stupid woman, you're the one who signed up for this in the first place. And it's nice to have a sense of humor about what you're doing, right? And just you don't let yourself quit and you just keep going.
Well, but in our society, we have this idea that cold and tired and sore means I have to quit. Cold and tired and sore means cold and tired and sore and nothing more.
Yeah.
Right?
We would not exist as a species if that's where we stopped.
Sure. Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And she talks about planning for the bad patch, right? And I think just like what you're saying, our levels for the bad patch are pretty weak, right? And I think most people haven't been in a situation where they've had to push themselves beyond that, and so they don't really have mentors or role models in society. You know, when you're in the military, you kind of see it more, right? But someone that does push beyond that and pushes beyond when their feet are bleeding or swollen, or like when Kale finishes the 500-miler, and it's good to be around that mentality. Yeah,
and generally, the average person in society is taught avoid sort of adversity at all costs, make life as easy as you can possibly make it, and that's somehow considered success. And we're fortunate that we've surrounded ourselves with a different kind of people who say, seek out adversity, find out how far you can go, then go a little bit further. And, I think you referenced Mark Webb in a previous conversation. Joe's a big fan of Mark Webb. I don't want to give any secrets away, but here's a guy who he just went through a horrendous situation that he's immediately finding the best in, and he says it's because I put myself in the path of hardship all the time. So, here's somebody now. She's just run 1,500 miles. Get back to Mimi. You don't go and run 1,500 miles without having put yourself in the path of adversity again and again and again.
I was just thinking that we aren't, we as a as a culture, because not all cultures have done this. We've just gotten so soft. Anything we're talking about here, 1,500 miles, we're meant to do that, right? We had to get across continents that way. We didn't have cabs and airplanes and helicopters, and so that's what we did, right? We lived in the woods.
Totally. I mean,
like
you look at the Kalahari Bushmen, right? And
the Kalahari Bushmen.
There you go.
If they're hunting down, there's such a cool name for what they're like antelope, but they literally run the animals until they're so dehydrated that the animals die, right? Mm-hmm. And that's that's
what we're designed to do.
That's what we're designed to do, and that's what we're designed to do. And there's a lot of lessons you can learn from the Kalahari Bushmen. Like, you go there, and when the kids are playing, they're quiet, right? Because they're always keeping their ears open for the bird language and for what animals they might be tracking, because that's their meal, that's their survival. So it's a different baseline, right?
We need to find some Kalahari Bushmen to move to Pittsfield.
That would be quite the privilege.
What would they listen for? Traffic?
No.
Not that there's a lot here, but I mean...
There's a ton here. I see raptors every day.
Not compared to a city. What I'm trying to say is we've evolved and we've adapted because our environment has as well. So while these children sat and listened for birds and other animals, the kids that we have in cities nowadays don't do that, because that might not be the threat, or may not be how they're going to eat or anything. They've evolved to learn different skills, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would agree, except that I'd say that I think we've jumped the shark, as Fonzie might say, going back a while, where we evolved and outsmarted ourselves. We got to the point where we made things so easy that now you use your cell phone to call for
everything,
delivery, and then the guy will walk over and hand it to you on the couch and swipe your credit card on his iPhone, and you don't even have to walk to the door anymore to get your food.
By the way, it's worse than that, right? Because we're upset when the pizza shows up 5 minutes late.
Sure, yeah. So I'd say that we've outsmarted ourselves to the point where we are getting weaker and weaker. Not when I say we, that's not everyone. And
certainly not Mimi.
Not Mimi. No, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
She's running 1,500 miles for a pizza. The point of Mimi is she's pushing limits so that we all can get a little inspiration, right? And get outside and do something. Maybe we walk to the pizza place. Yeah. Because she did 1,500 miles.
Yeah,
on
and
the
what she
Freedom
said,
Trail.
it doesn't have to be extreme, but it has to be something.
Yeah, time on feet, right? It's a good concept.
All right, so what do we got to do? We got to get everybody to SpartanUpPodcast.com. Yeah. They got to check out Colonel Nye's inspirational interactive corner.
He's got a new adjective.
You're going to love it.
You're going to love it.
You're going to love it.
We got to check out Dr. Johnny Waite and all his techniques for keeping mentally healthy. And then if you happen to be hanging out with the Kalahari Bushmen, you can see.
Bring them back. She's dying to have them come.
Bring them back because she's been waiting in the woods for one.